were both about to die. We both ended up in ICU, and finally I'm laying there alone, and I'm like, all right, God, keep her alive, and I will continue to teach people how to live and live their best lives. That was like a gut punch moment in your life, you know, when you just almost can't comprehend what you just heard. And I was in the other room, she was playing with her dad. I remember like freezing when I heard it, because it was like, I knew she meant it. I knew exactly, I mean, out of a 3-year-old's mouth, you know, they speak truth, you know? And so I realized this is the reality that she thinks is normal. How come mommy never laughs? It was such a in my heart moment, and this wasn't about me anymore. I had to kind of wake up and realize my marriage was crumbling, right? I was carrying everything. I was exhausted from holding it all together, and then I'm calling it responsibility, right? I'm responsible one. I wanted to be joy and not baggage for her, yet that's all what she was seeing. I wasn't the mother that she wanted me, that I wanted to be, that I wanted her to have. And so that was the moment that was crystal clear. I had to change me, not him, not the situation, me. And kind of that moment now has never left me. Like, it's just always been in who I am, to show people, right, this quiet moment shaped basically everything that came next. I'm having these revelations. I'm having these moments of like, this isn't who I am. And then my marriage fails. And I struggled to wrap my brain around that, because it was a non-negotiable for me. Marriage was so vitally important to me. And the fact that that was failing, I was a failure. The fact that I had this coaching company I just started, I could train hundreds at a time. Why can't I coach one-on-one? Well, Dawn, you're a mess right now. You shouldn't be healing anybody if you can't see yourself. This is a huge like awakening. Like, I'm building all these things, and yet I am crashing to the ground. And it was hitting me so much harder than I was revealing to anybody else. Because once that divorce hit, once I realized I was coaching people when I was an absolute emotional disaster, divorce wasn't freedom. All it was more pressure. It wasn't what everybody keeps saying it is. Responsibility multiplied like overnight. And I didn't know what to do with all of this. I was a single mom and financial strain, but I was carrying this all quietly. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna be a stay-at-home mom one way or another. So I opened a hair salon, and everyone told me, you can't do that. You can't just open a hair salon and start from scratch. I was like, watch me, because I wasn't willing to negotiate my children. It wasn't gonna happen. And my time with them. So I went and got my hair license, got a salon license, opened a hair salon. And what's fascinating is when coaching and healing runs through your veins, they were getting double dipped. They were getting beautiful on the outside and beautiful on the inside, and I was getting drained again. This kept punching me over and over again. A divorce, a single mom, 2 businesses. I shut down my coaching business for a while, yet it reactivated right there behind a hair chair. I couldn't run from what was in my veins, which was healing and consulting and giving people an understanding of what was inside. My caregiver burnout started hitting my body. I was pushing too hard. I had been pushing too long. I was keeping it together on the outside. My body was demanding my attention, and I couldn't ignore myself anymore. And death's door showed up again. Back in the hospital, back in crisis and trauma. And stress had become the normal for me, and I just couldn't see past it. And so I had a severe reaction to an antibiotic, and it was life-threatening, and everything stopped again. I was alone, I was exhausted, I was scared. Now I've got a hospital bill for a week sitting on my shoulders, and I lost it, alone in my bed, screaming to God, angels, universe, whoever would listen, right? I need help. I don't know where to go from here. I was probably at the worst I had ever been, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I was completely empty. And I had this moment when I screamed for help. I had a memory, and the memory was of Tony Robbins. I had been to a Tony Robbins event, and I'll never forget it because he called me up in front of 3,000 people on the big mega screen, and I'm up there on the screen, and he basically said this phrase to me. He said, "You've lost your passion." And he was so right. And this memory, just literally that little snippet popped into my brain, and I was like, he's right again. Right now, I have no passion for life. At this point, I had done a TED Talk called Drama Detox, yet my life was full of drama. And it just drained me, right? And I realized that moment, I couldn't run away from the clarity of truth. The harsh reality where I'm sitting at this point in my life is that on the outside, I have created businesses, I am rocking the world, and on the inside, I am a total fraud. I am totally lying to myself because I know I can do 10 times better than what I am delivering to everyone, because I am doing it at a level that they all expect from me. I was giving what everybody wanted. Look, I have a business. Look, I have healthy, beautiful children. Look, I'm healthy and fit. Look, I run, I work out. Look, I have everything that you would expect on paper crashed into me like a tidal wave saying, "You're a liar. This isn't true." Now, no one would know that, but I knew it. And what's fascinating is I wrote a book coming out of that hospital room because I had to rest for 2 weeks. And I wrote a book called Balls, Building Balanced Relationships, because I knew I was out of balance. It wasn't like I got to go out and prove to everybody I wrote a book. That book came from my soul. That book was and it wasn't from like, ha ha ha, everybody. And I guess maybe you can take it from like, the masculine perspective, testosterone, do you have any balls? Like, get your balls back, because it's really true. But at the end of the day, we're all juggling so many balls, and then we drop the balls that actually count. Your health, your wealth, and yourself. When kind of this reality check kicked in, was that everybody was coming to me for the very thing that I needed to look at within. I had done the therapy, I had done the counseling, I'd taken the meds, I had been to the books and the classes, and you name it, I had done it all. And I realized none of that was gonna work unless I was calling myself out on my own BS, which was the things I was avoiding were simply blind spots because I didn't want to see them, because they were hard and they were insecure and they weren't comfortable to say, I'm not good at this. My Lighthouse mastery framework was what scared me, because people told me, if you use astrology in business, Daune, it's too woo-woo, people won't take you serious. They're gonna call you weird. And then I was like, but I am weird. That's what makes me so good, because I'm not following the template and protocols that everybody else follows. So when I was cracked open at my worst, I realized there were always signs leading back to like being a little girl. I was always obsessed with what was inside. Like the outside never truly told the full story for me. And I remember when I was a little girl, my grandma had this huge rock pile, and I would go in the garage and steal the hammer and I'd crack the rocks open. And even then, beauty isn't on the surface. I felt it as a little girl, as a child. I knew this, right? And so that lesson probably stuck with me, and maybe it's always been there my whole life, right? So that's the same thing I see in people now, right? Nothing about them is broken, it's just unopened. This pattern kept repeating in my life because the parts of the whole then moved into following me into college. The entire world opened up to me again because I was in anatomy and physiology, and again, all the parts made up the whole as a human being. Totally made sense to me. And so what I realized, this keeps continuing in my life, same patterns, different costumes, people, pain, stories, the same energy is repeating, whether it's in rocks, whether it's in bodies, whether it's in your mind. The fascinating piece about astrology in general, it's been given such a bad rap. Typical astrology is mathematical equations of messages. And most people use it to predict the future. I don't care about your future. Your future is going to look exactly like it did yesterday until you use it to the right now. So my mission is to work with people who are self-driven leaders who have done all the work I've done and still are burnt out. I know that well, stuck and playing small. I've been there and I've done that. I know how they feel, and it's one validating action that we can see visually on a piece of paper fast, and it shifts their entire reality. So easy to look at when you look at someone who's successful, which are stuck or burnt out in health, in wealth, or in love. Which one? And immediately they'll go to the typically relationships. Typically people who are hyper successful in money or career, right? And they're like, but I'm doing great. I'm excelling. How are your relationships? And then I get a complete lockup. You're right. That's probably one of my weak spots. And thus we move forward and go, well, we can validate that and override it. Would you like to master all 12 categories of your life, or do you just want to be a master at money and career? Most people think that you need to love yourself more. And I completely disagree. You need to understand yourself, your blocks, your boulders, your bruises, your baggage, and your breakthroughs. And when you know you're playing small, you're avoiding those blind spots. Doesn't that feel exhausting? Wouldn't it be great to live in a complete power move?